Welcome to Arirang TV's special coverage of COVID-19. I'm Min Son-hee. The pandemic has triggered legal disputes, and we take a look at the legal landscape in today's studio session with our panel of experts. But first up, concerns over cluster infections in the metropolitan area continue amid a steady rise in the number of imported cases. For more on this, I have our Kwon So-ah, and for more on COVID-19 related news, I have our Kim Ji-yeon. So we'll start with you. I hear that imported cases are on the rise again on this Wednesday.
Yes, Sunny. While we are seeing a decline in local infections recently, there has been a rise in imported cases, as you just said. And today we have 28 out of these. And it looks like these numbers have been in the double digits for some 20 days now. So in total with that, we have 39 new cases this Wednesday, bringing the total accumulation of cases to 13,551. The death toll has been remaining at 289 for the past couple of days, and 914 people are still in quarantine, while 12,348 people have made a full recovery, with 66 more people discharged from hospitals. Now, for the past week, numbers have been ranging between the low 30s and the low 60s, and although we do see a rise by 6 more cases compared to yesterday, what's significant is that local infections have actually gone down from 14 to 11. And with that, let's take a look at where the new cases occurred. We have most cases in the metropolitan region, with 5 in Gyeonggi-do province, 6 in the capital Seoul, 1 in Incheon, and then also 3 new cases in the city of Daejeon and 1 in the southwestern city of Gwangju. And those include imported cases, 2 imported cases in Gyeonggi-do province and 2 in Daejeon and 1 in Incheon, which means in Seoul all cases were local infections today, and 23 cases were detected at airports or seaports. Now, the reason for an increase in people testing positive during these screenings is attributed to the rise in global cases, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. We have a total of 13.45 million cases around the world, with over 581,000 fatalities. Meanwhile, some 7.84 million people have recovered from the disease. And let's move over to some major outbreaks around the world. We have the U.S. at more than 3.54 million cases and almost 140,000 fatalities. And it looks like Brazil and India will soon hit a new milestone. Brazil soon to see 2 million and India 1 million. Meanwhile, Peru and Chile have between 319,000 and 333,000 cases, and Russia almost 740,000 total cases. Let's move over to other places. We are seeing Mexico with over 311,000 total cases, and South Africa has now surpassed the UK, now over 298,000 cases, and Iran, Pakistan, UK between 250,000 and 291,000 total cases. And those are the figures I have for now, but I'll be back with more after the government briefing later. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, so thank you for that for now. Last week, we touched upon the importance of the Korean military combating COVID-19 to limit its impact on national security. Today, we delve into the impact of the pandemic on Korea's weapons system, its maintenance and acquisition. For more on this, I have our Defense Ministry correspondent, Kim Ji-yeon, here in the studio. Welcome, Ji-yeon.
Welcome. Thank you.
Right, Ji-yeon, COVID-19 has affected a number of industries around the world, of course, and I hear that the defense sector is no exception.
That's right. One of the biggest delays in weapons acquisition by the South Korean military is, of course, the planned arrival of F-35A stealth fighter jets to South Korea from the U.S. For now, it's been delayed to the second half of the year due to the coronavirus. The F-35A jets, manufactured by Lockheed Martin, give South Korea's Air Force the capability to evade radar detection and are expected to boost the country's strategic targeting of potential enemy forces when a threat is imminent. They can fly at a supersonic speed of Mach 1.8 and carry a variety of weapon systems, including air-to-air missiles and precision-guided bombs. Pundits say the acquisition of the jets could be a game changer in shaping the security dynamics of the Korean peninsula. The F-35A jets are known to be one of the most feared weapons by North Korea, since they could attack a target and come back to base undetected. The military had planned to bring in some 10 more fighter jets this year as part of its plan to deploy 40 units through next year. But additional deliveries hadn't been made since February this year. So far, only 13 of them have arrived. last year.
Right. Chen, how's the delivery of these particular fighter jets made?
Normally, a U.S. Air Force pilot, it's the so-called ferry flight, makes the delivery from Luke Air Base in Arizona to Hawaii and then to Guam before finally arriving at Cheongju Air Base. But those that had been scheduled to arrive in April this year have not been delivered yet due to travel restrictions that the U.S. Department of Defense had imposed on all uniformed personnel due to COVID-19. And this is not just the case for South Korea, as deliveries of weapons and core parts have been delayed worldwide for similar reasons. Defense industry exhibitions that had been scheduled to be held during the first half of this year worldwide have been postponed or canceled due to the coronavirus. And these events are particularly important for the South Korean defense circles in terms of acquiring or exporting state-of-the-art weapons.
Right. And staying with such cancellations, can you tell us more about some of the other events that have been cancelled or postponed amid COVID-19?
Sure. Among the events that was canceled this year due to the coronavirus is the world's largest international air traffic management, or World ATM Congress, which was scheduled to be held this March in Madrid, Spain. Also, Defense Services Asia, or DSA, initially planned to be held this year in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, was pushed back to March 2022. And there, some 1,000 business entities from around 60 countries were to participate in the event. And last but not least, the Vietnam International Defense and Security Exhibition, or VIDSE, in Hanoi was delayed to mid-September from March.
Right. So how is the government dealing with such changes stemming from COVID-19?
Right. The South Korean government is trying to strengthen efforts to boost the competitiveness of the local arms exporters and try to lessen the reliance of the country's foreign reliance in weapons acquisitions, and at the same time help the local defense industry to grow. During a meeting presided over by Defense Minister Chung Yong-do last week, officials discussed policies to expand arms exports and to increase the use of domestically produced parts and weapon systems, including particularly the parts regarded as key components.
The defense industry is vital in ensuring strong national defense, as well as future economic growth through arms exports. The government is preparing for a post-coronavirus era through industry innovation by becoming a first mover instead of playing catch-up with the technology developed by other advanced countries.
The ministry also designated the southeastern city of Changwon and the surrounding Gyeongsang-namdo province earlier this year as the country's first defense industry innovation cluster, in which the government plans to spend nearly $38 million over the next 5 years to back the industry. The local defense industry reported $12 billion in sales last year. That's up by around 2% from a year earlier, but its overseas sales dropped by 11.5% to $1.5 billion.
I see. All right, Chen, thank you very much for that informative coverage regarding the defense sector amid the pandemic. See you soon.
My pleasure.
Right, it's a little after 2 in the afternoon here in Korea, just in time for the regular government briefing on COVID-19. As our Kwon-Seo reported, Korea's daily number of infections for this Wednesday stands at 39, with 11 local infections and 28 imported transmissions. Speaking of the latter, concerns are mounting as cases of coming in from overseas have been hovering in the double digits for some 3 weeks. In fact, on Monday, Korea noted 43 imported infections. Such cases had dropped the single-digit figure in early June, but rebounded in mid-June amid a surge in global infections. In a bid to better address this reality, authorities are now calling on arrivals from high-risk nations, including Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, to hand in certificates that show they tested negative for the virus at least 48 hours prior to departure. Moreover, those entering Korea through its seaports are now also subject to 14 days of self-quarantine, as is the case for those entering the country through its airports. Also, members of the public are being advised to abide by safety measures, including the wearing of face masks at all times and avoiding of confined and crowded places that could raise their chances of infections. We are still waiting for that briefing to commence, and perhaps while we do, we can take a look at the daily life quarantine guidelines recommended by the government for members of the public to ensure their health. As seen on the screen, we are asking you to stay home for at least 3 to 4 days if you find yourself feeling sick, and should you believe that you may have been exposed to COVID-19, do get yourself tested. Also, keep your distance from those around you. Stay at least 2 arms length away from others. And wash your hands for 30 seconds and cough into your sleeves as part of efforts to practice personal hygiene to ensure your health and that of those around you. Remember to ventilate your office as well as your home at least twice a day. In the case of using an air conditioner this summer, remember to ventilate your spaces at least once every 2 hours to make sure that there is a healthy flow of air in your space. Please be emotionally supportive to family members as well to ensure that they're able to overcome this particular hardship. The briefing is started. We'll come back to you afterwards.
Now we will begin our regular briefing for July 15th. First, here is Deputy Director Kwon Junuk with the explanation. Let us now begin our regular briefing for July 15th, Wednesday, on the COVID-19 response here in South Korea. As of today midnight, we had 11 new local infections, and now the total number of confirmed cases stands at 13,551. 66 more people have been discharged following full recovery, while 914 people are in quarantine. The death toll remains unchanged. And we had 28 new imported cases as of yesterday. First of all, here are some updates on the major domestic infections. Staying in the city of Seoul, in relation to an office building in the Gwanakgu district, 1 additional case has been confirmed, and now the total stands at 9. And in Yeoksamdong V building in Gangnam-gu district, we have 1 additional case, and the total now stands at 9. And in relation to the Hanwha Insurance Company, since we have confirmed the index case on the 11th of July, we have 4 additional cases, with the total now standing at 5. Next, the city of Daejeon. At Daejeon, we also have a construction site at Yuseong-gu district. Since we have identified the first index case on the 7th of July, we have 4 additional cases. The total now stands at 5. Today we don't have new infections in Gwangju, but here are some analysis of a door-to-door sales group in the city of Gwangju. On the June 27th, we had the first case of the index case being confirmed, and in relation to this, door-to-door sales, we have 141 accumulated cases, and of them, 27 people are the visitors to the door-to-door sales, and also the rest are the additional contacts of them, and about half of them more than half of them are over the age of 50, and as the risks of factors of risk, we have found that they had very enclosed and close contact environment, and they also had a very long stay within the closed environment. And in addition, we also had secondary infections through religious facilities, and which also spread to businesses, business establishments, offices, private academies, as well as mobile carrier-related companies. And we also have a diagram included in the press kit to help your understanding. And we also found through our epidemiological investigation that most of the people did not wear face masks, or they also wore the face mask in a wrong manner when they went to the promotional sessions for these products, and they stayed there for a very long time, and they also met in small groups very frequently, and these were the venues of the COVID-19 spread. And at the same time also, when they have symptoms, they visited multi-use facilities, including clinics as well as saunas and other multi-use facilities, which also led to additional transmissions. To this end, the quarantine authorities, we also want to highlight the fact that we have an increase of the spread of the virus through such door-to-door establishments. And in order to curb the further spread, we ask all of the members of the middle to elderly citizens to refrain from going to these promotional centers, and please refrain from going to small group meetings and postpone or cancel your outings. And also wear face masks if you need to go to these places inevitably. And if you have developed symptoms after going to these facilities, please do not go to other outings and gatherings and get tested as soon as possible. Next, here are some updates on our new imported cases as of yesterday. Yesterday, we had a total of 28 new imported cases, and at the point of entry, 23 have been confirmed. And out of the 28 imported cases, 1 from America, 2 from Europe, and also 25 of them were from Asia, excluding China. 14 were from Iraq, Kazakhstan 3, Uzbekistan 3, and 2 from the Philippines. During the day yesterday, we had 151 ships embarking at the seaports, at 11 seaports nationwide, and we have also carried out our on-board quarantine measures. And also, as we reported briefly yesterday, we also have found that a Russian flagship has embarked in the port of Busan, and it was there were 44 sailors on board, and we carried out the PCR testings, and out of the 22 people who wished to show intentions to offload from the boat, 1 tested positive to the COVID-19. And this vessel also came to Korea on the June 16th, and it also went out to the sea for navigation, and it shifted their sailors, and it re-entered the port of Busan. And we are conducting our epidemiological investigation for all of the sailors who were on board, and all of the others tested negative. At the same time, before we carried out this PCR testings for the people, for the sailors who wished to off-board the ships, we also tested the other contact members, and also we are waiting for the results as of now. To this end, the quarantine authorities, we would like to intensify the standards of the boat sailors for their entry into Korea. And as for all of the sailors on board the ship, we will be intensifying their quarantine measures, and also they will be mandated for 14 days of quarantine. And from yesterday, we have put in place a new measure to carry out all of the quarantine measures for people who are wishing to offload from the ship. And here are some more updates on our imported cases. Especially, we have a very big global COVID-19 case, and we also have other infectious diseases such as MERS, Ebola, and so forth, which are spreading across the country, across the nations. And as for MERS, it is also spreading through Middle East, and also as for pests, we are seeing a spread of the virus through the Mongolia and so forth, and also DPA is spreading through the countries like Vietnam and so forth. And as of now, these infectious diseases are not yet spreading across South Korea. However, we will also continue to intensify monitoring on all of the foreign entrants to Korea, and we'll be continuously monitoring the situation going forward, and we will also monitor the situations abroad, and we will update the public as well. Last but not least, here are some measures on the life quarantine measures, and we highlight that you need to always wash your hands thoroughly, and please wear your face masks indoors, and please keep 2 meters of healthy distance with each other. Last but not least, here are some recommendations for our public. As you heard today, the number of local infections is decreasing steadily, daily. And this has been witnessed during the past few days. And last week, we had this number hovering around the 20s. However, it dropped to its teens from this week. And we are also seeing reduced numbers of cluster infections. Of course, it is not the time for us to be relaxed and relieved. However, this was all possible thanks to the efforts put forth by every one of our citizens as well as our local governments. Even at this point, at metropolitan area and also the citizens in Daejeon and Gwangju, we have many citizens who are participating in distancing measures, and we believe that these efforts are yielding fruits. And 6 months ago, when we had the first influx imported cases in Korea, we believe that the situation has been overturned. When we had a first case of imported case, when we think of our reaction to that number back then, we believe that we cannot be relaxed because we have these imported cases staying in double digits. As for this number of imported cases staying in its double digits, we need to continue to preserve and exert efforts to curb the virus from coming into the country. And as we mentioned earlier, U.S. and Latin America, they are also witnessing a very grave conditions. And yesterday we had a virtual meeting with the National Health and Research Center in Italy. And we also said that they are conducting their epidemiological investigations behind the continuous spread. And we also felt that the situations abroad are very grave. And as you saw in today's briefing, if you stick to the basic principles, we can effectively curb the virus. And if we comply strictly with the quarantine measures, we can decrease the number of patients in critical conditions. And we can also decrease the number of fatality rates, and also we will have a lower level of fear against the virus, and we can go back to our routine daily lives in a very early manner. And we believe that the virus does not discriminate anyone in the sense of race, ethnicity, or gender, or nationality. It is threatening the humanity as a whole, and there is no other special solution to fight against the virus. We believe it is very important to adapt to the virus. And once again, we highlight that South Korea, for the first in all international arena, we could set the new model for fighting against the virus. As we did so far, we continue to ask the public to continue to exert efforts in participating in our quarantine measures. Thank you very much.
Right, that was Kwon Junuk, the Vice Head of KCDC, with Wednesday's afternoon briefing. Let's go over the gist of that briefing, Suha.
All right, well, the gist is that imported cases are rising and local infections are going down. And today's imported cases were from the Americas, Europe, and the majority was from Asia. And also one case that had been briefly touched upon yesterday was a case related to a Russian-flagged ship. And it looks like one person on that ship that re-entered at a port in Busan. One person has tested positive on that ship, and that is after the government has implemented stricter measures at seaports as well as airports. And speaking of the airports, actually stricter quarantine measures regarding foreigners entering Korea has been expanded to 6 nations deemed to be countries with high risk of COVID-19 spread. So along with Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, 2 more countries have been added there. That will begin on the 20th, but the government did not elaborate on which countries those are. It looks like they are communicating with the countries, the designated countries, through the embassies. So we will have more on that later, I believe. And in the meantime, there have been more cluster infections around the capital, Seoul. So imported cases as well as local infections still all remain a concern.
Right, so thank you for that. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Up next, a 50-year-old Korean woman is now recovering from a lung transplant after testing positive for COVID-19 earlier this year. We have details of that in this report.
This hospital in Gyeonggi-do Province is home to a very special group of medical professionals. For more than 6 months, healthcare workers all across Korea have been battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Among them, the medical staff at this particular hospital has been credited with the country's first successful lung transplant on a COVID-19 patient. COVID-19 patients show various symptoms of respiratory illness, such as fever, coughing, breathing difficulties, and pneumonia. When compared to healthy individuals, damage is clearly visible on a COVID-19 patient's lung when viewed through a microscope. This is a damaged lung that was removed from the COVID-19 patient who received a lung transplant. Unlike soft, healthy lungs, it has hardened like a rock due to severe pulmonary fibrosis. The female patient in her 50s did not show any signs of serious illness when she was first diagnosed with COVID-19.
숨이 아주 차기보다는 열이랑 저산소증으로 왔는데 그거에 비해서는 숨 차는 건 별로 없었고요. 인공호흡기가 100% 도와줘도 산소 농도가 유지가 안 되면 그때 에크모를 하게 되는 거죠. 이 환자도 기도사건을 하고 인공호흡기를 시작했는데 다음 날에도 산소 농도가 계속 떨어지고 버티지 못하는 상황까지 이르러서 결국 에크모를 하게 됐습니다.
ECMO is a device that circulates a patient's blood and adds oxygen to red blood cells. Despite receiving lengthy ECMO treatment, the patient in question suffered irreversible lung damage due to COVID-19 and had no choice but to undergo a lung transplant.
안전하게 하기 위해서 그 에크모 자체를 심장보조 에크모로 변환을 한 후에 그 일반적인 수술 과정을 거쳐서 오른쪽 폐를 먼저 이식을 하고 그 다음에 좌측 폐를 이식을 하고 그리고 다행히 또 지혈이 순조롭게 진행이 돼서 비교적 적절한 시간 내에 수술을 마칠 수가 있었습니다.
Korea is the 9th country in the world to successfully carry out a lung transplant operation on a COVID-19 patient. The operation was carried out in conjunction with many medical professionals in a wide range of disciplines. Lee Soon-hee, who is a certified nurse, was always by the patient's side around the clock to monitor her progress.
지금 누워서 자전거 타시고요. 그다음에 그거 자전거 말고 그 외에는 침상에서 내려와서 앉았다 일어났다 그거 연습하시고 지금 계속 그렇게 재활하고 계세요.
The patient is now hoping to get her normal life back without any major side effects, with the help of nurses and other medical staff.
대유행이 만약 발생한다면 저희가 어떤 환자를 적극적으로 치료해서 폐이식까지 치료를 할 여력이 되지가 않아서 귀중한 생명을 잃을 수가 있겠습니다. 그래서 지금 계속 국가에서 얘기하는 사회적 거리 두기를 충분히 해서 조금만 더 참고 약제와 백신이 개발되면 충분히 극복이 될 수 있을 것으로 생각이 됩니다.
Even in the absence of a vaccine, successful lung transplant operations are offering hope that even the most critically ill COVID-19 patients can still be saved until a permanent cure is found.
Over in the US, the Trump administration has surrendered a controversial policy that would have forced international scholars to leave the country if their courses move fully online this autumn. Now, Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology were among the first to challenge the visa restriction. And for more on this, I have Lee Chi-in, the vice head of the Korean Graduate Students Association at MIT, live on the landline. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, hello.
Ashley, perhaps we can begin with some background regarding this latest development. Now, it was just a week ago that the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement announced its intentions to restrict visas for foreign students whose schools decide to provide online classes only. Now, your school, along with Harvard, were among the first to take this case to court. Please tell us more.
Right. So on July 6th, Immigration and Customs Enforcement announced an international order that would have prohibited many international students from studying in the United States if their classes would be fully online. So right after the announcement, MIT and Harvard jointly filed a lawsuit in federal court in Massachusetts, asking the court to prevent ICE and DHS from enforcing the new guidance and to declare it unlawful. MIT strongly believes that the policy disrupts the international students' lives and jeopardizes their academic and research pursuits. Since last week, there has been outpouring support and action from higher education, labor unions, companies, and other civic organizations. Many students were actively involved as well, like contributing their personal stories to the legal effort and organizing a national coalition of students and filing a brief. Under the leadership of the presidents of MIT and Harvard, many colleges and universities across the country signed court briefs in support of the lawsuit. Thankfully, however, right before the court hearing yesterday, the federal government rescinded the July 6th ICE directive, and schools will now follow ICE guidelines from March that allows flexibility regarding student visa.
Ashley, what perhaps is the reason for the Trump administration's decision to abandon this policy, according to the media there?
Well, the July 6th announcement has been highly criticized by many colleges, universities, and especially tech companies. And I believe the main drive was Harvard and MIT suits, since Trump administration has agreed to withdraw right after the lawsuit has been filed. And this is viewed as a significant victory, not only for MIT and Harvard, but also for higher education associations and international students who are hoping to pursue their academic endeavors in the United States.
And speaking of international students, how are Korean students there responding to this latest shift in stance by the Trump administration?
Now that all students who are currently in the United States or planning to take courses online in the fall semester can lawfully maintain their visa status, this definitely comes as an enormous relief. Students can now better focus on their education and research without worrying about their legality. And considering all the uncertainties and series of unexpected announcements made in the past few months, it is difficult to say that there will be no more surprises. However, during the past week, it has been clear that the school are doing their best to protect and support all of it, which personally means a lot.
On a slightly different note, Ashley, how severe is the COVID-19 situation in Massachusetts where you are?
While Massachusetts is continuing to report new coronavirus deaths and confirmed cases, the outbreak is much less severe than it was in mid-April. We are now entering the third phase of reopening the economy, and all citizens are remaining vigilant, wearing masks in public spaces and respecting social distancing.
And given that circumstances, what are some of the other hardships faced by Korean students there, Ashley?
Ever since the coronavirus outbreak, there have been significant changes and regulations to deal with the pandemic, which impose a great deal of stress for all international students in the United States. All of us have been scrambling to figure out our academic and travel plans according to the rapidly changing situation. Because there are so many uncertainties, it is difficult to make plans even for the near future. And many students are still anxiously waiting for more concrete announcements to be made by the universities and the government. So while I can't speak for everyone, the situation has been especially difficult for those who have friends and families in Korea. While some students were forced out of dorms on campus back in March, others who managed to stay in the States, including myself, haven't been able to go back to Korea even after the semester ended, mainly due to the fear of not being able to come back to the United States and maintaining our legal status. So all these added concerns are preventing the students from fully focusing on their academics and career pursuits, and I sincerely hope that the situation will get better soon.
Right, we hope so too, Ashley. Thank you very much for making the time to share your thoughts with us at this hour.
Thank you.
신천지 교회 측에 법적 책임을 묻고 방역 활동이나 감염병 치료 등을 위해 공공에서 지출한 비용을 회수하고자 합니다.
등록금 반환 소송의 피고 대학과 대한민국은 상반기 등록금 반환이란 대학생의 요구에 책임 있게 응답하라.
Efforts to establish a new normal have given rise to a fair share of legal disputes as well, ranging from those related to quarantine violations to the more complicated ones involving countries. For more on this, I have Professor John Park from Handong Global University. Welcome back, Professor Park.
Thank you for having me.
And I also have Professor An Jun-sung from Yonsei University. Good to see you again, Professor An.
Thank you.
Professor Park, we'll start with you. Amid the pandemic, what legal disputes appear to be on the rise and which ones appear to be on the decline?
Right, so if we were to sort of categorize the types of lawsuits, one big area is the public prosecution, public interest related cases where the government is pursuing aggressive action for violations of quarantine and other types of harm that is caused, so against citizens or against maybe entities. And then you have a series of government-to-government type action, such as the case of U.S. versus China or other countries. And then you have this area of private lawsuits, individuals against even the government, or individuals against other individuals, or maybe even companies and the workplace. And so you're going to see an aggregate rise in all of these areas, but particularly in the business industry, where the healthcare industry has been affected tremendously. And so you're going to see a lot more cases of individual lawsuits, of course in Korea, but in very litigious countries like the US, an exponential rise in these cases.
I see. Professor, and as of this past Monday, 11 people here in Korea face legal charges for violations of quarantine measures and other safety regulations. What meaning does the government-led legal repercussions against these people hold?
Yeah, actually, as of July 13th, there has been reported cases, right, about total 1,200 cases in violation of the Infectious Disease Prevention and Control Act. And actually, I have different data from, I got it from about 10 cases for arrest, right? And then it's very interesting observation because that if you see the total number, about 1,200 cases, and I think about 60 or 70% actually they finished investigation police finished the investigation. About 91% of the case actually sent to the public prosecutor office. That's pretty high because that if compared with the other cases, over 90% of the rate of they send it to prosecutor office means that how serious the Korean government take this case means that 9 out of 10 cases actually, if you have the arrest, caught by violation for the infectious disease violation, 9 out of 10 people will go to the prosecution office to possibly facing charge. So I think the government taking very seriously this case.
Right. And staying with that, Professor Park, a Japanese national was recently handed a suspended prison term for violating the mandatory 2-week self-isolation period several times, of course.
Yes.
Is there a discrepancy between the legal repercussions faced by Korean nationals and their foreign counterparts here in the country?
Well, I think in the case that you mentioned, an argument can be made that the Japanese national who violated the quarantine rules by, I think, 8 times out of his hotel during the quarantine time received actually a less or more lenient sentence than the Korean national, which was the first prosecution in Korea a couple of months ago, a 27-year-old man who received a 4-month sentence, not suspended. So comparatively, I guess you can say that maybe the foreigner got a little better, exact comparison, although the case was different. But I think everyone knows that the law is applicable to both foreigners and domestic individuals equally. Both the prosecution efforts of anyone who violates the laws in this country, you're going to be subject to prosecution, not necessarily more favorable or less, more harsh. And I think that's just the right way to approach a fair application of the law, regardless of your nationality.
Right. Now, aside from the violations of self-quarantine periods, we've also had a case where here in Korea, the wearing of face masks, it's mandatory on all public transportation. And more recently, Busan's Haeundae Beach is now requiring all visitors to wear face masks or to face fines. Tell us your thoughts on this.
Actually, we talked about that because I think recently about this show, program. And it's from July 25th, in the 5 beaches, including Haeundae, it's 5 beaches now. Actually, the Haeundae, they were started, but I think the Busan city take it as a citywide measure. So from July 25th, if you refuse to wear the mask on the 5 beaches in Busan, you likely face a penalty, fine of maximum 3 million won. up to 300 million won. And there's one that's under the Article 49 under the Infection Disease Prevention Control Act, which allowed authorities to issue disinfection order or other necessary measure. So I think that's how the legal ground the Busan city government using it. They're basing that Article 49 to take a new measure, because that last time there's several, I think, quite a number of the U.S. military personnel refused to wear the mask, in the public. So that's
on the 4th of July.
Yeah, that was I'm sending very wrong signal to the Korean public as well, because you concern other general public, right? So I guess the local government take actions based on the Article 49, right?
Right. Professor Park, you mentioned this earlier, but class action lawsuits are also on the rise here. What trend are they taking amid the pandemic?
I think when you have an aggregate group of people affected by some decision making that affected them adversely, whether it's even domestically here in Korea with the Coupang employees taking action, or other types of individuals who were adversely affected by someone else's conduct. So you're going to see class action lawsuits and lawyers who specialize in that field. This is very complex law, because you need to have make certain kind of quantity in order to satisfy the requirements to initiate action. And I think that as more and more of these cases are happening here domestically, but also abroad, everyone's going to be watching each other to see how these decisions are being meted out, whether the court is accepting them, how the courts are going to decide these cases. And there really is a wave of litigation, I think, that is coming.
Right. Professor Park mentioned this earlier, but there are also legal disputes involving individuals against the state. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Actually, there's the reported case in Busan. In last February, the Busan city government mistakenly included a franchise restaurant as a site of possible infection. So it means that the individual visited that restaurant and later turned out to be confirmed with the COVID-19 infection. And the problem was that, according to the owner, the restaurant used to be like hot place, always crowded with people. But thanks to due to the wrong government information, they suffered great loss, and they end up filing bankruptcy. So now they're trying to sue the Korean government for the compensation for the loss of business. But however, it's kind of a beginning stage. So we don't have much information yet, but we have to see how it progress in the future. But we have to see how it develops later.
How it will unfold in the future, then, I see. Professor Park, you mentioned this. There's a lawsuit against China filed by the U.S. for compensation in light of COVID-19. What are your thoughts on this legal battle?
Right. I think there's a question to be asked whether this is really a monetary compensation pursuit from the U.S. side. Of course, there's a lot of money that's involved here. We're talking trillions of dollars. And so multiple states in the U.S. have filed lawsuits together. Attorney generals have gotten together and filed collective lawsuits. Individual citizen groups have brought class action lawsuits against China. The problem with many of these cases is, even if you have a really good substantive case, there's a significant procedural hurdle that they're going to have to overcome, which is the U.S. Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, which really limits a sovereign government from being sued by individuals or even other governments. And so likely these things are going to be, that's the challenge, whether the procedural hurdle is going to be overcome. And that's going to be very difficult for these things. But it's not always about the money. It's not always about monetary compensation. There are geopolitical consequences of making a solid case in your home jurisdiction or in some international tribunal. And I think that this kind of pressure, there's more involved, I guess, in the reasons why these lawsuits are being pursued.
Professor, and given concerns over imported cases, Korea has designated a number of nations as high-risk areas, and all arrivals from there are required to hand in a certificate showing that they are COVID-19 negative. These countries currently include 4, that's Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. And as our Kwon Swa mentioned earlier, the country, Korea, is thinking of adding 2 more countries to that list, but they have not revealed the names of these 2 nations, citing diplomatic reasons. How do you interpret this stance by the government here?
Well, actually, according to my research, I think the government is considering about 11 countries as the watch list. So I guess the reason they not disclosing the fact that the data is that it's very sensitive information, because that if one country is saying publicly announced that this country is very high rate of infection rate, right? That means they're could be possibly sending wrong message to the other neighbor country or the other, or even the WHO, right? So it's very sensitive. Remember that even the U.S. government take a very cautious approach about the Korean visitor to U.S. I think although there was high number of the incident in Korea, I think the U.S. government was kind of wait until try to not to get imposed put any restriction on, try not to minimize any restrictions. So it's more diplomatic reason and some political reason as well. So I guess it's very careful. And I think that the Korean government is all the government actually in the world. I mean, they're facing how to maintain the delicate balance between the quarantine and then there's their business or foreign relations, right? That's a very difficult question. Not only Korean government, all governments facing at this time, and we have to see how it develops, right, in the later.
I see. Only time will tell then.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Professor An, as always, thank you for your thoughts, and Professor Park, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Right, on that note, we end Wednesday's edition of COVID-19. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we explore the impact of digital reliance amid the pandemic on privacy concerns and more. In the meantime, do reach out to us with your thoughts and inquiries through our social media accounts or homepage, arirang.com. Do take care.